The horizon holds its breath. A thin, jagged line of indigo separates the black sky from the darker sea. Silence dominates the Samsun coast, heavy and absolute. Then the first sliver of gold pierces the water. It is not a gentle glow, but a sharp, sudden rupture of light that bleeds across the waves. The surface of the ocean catches the fire, turning the dark swells into shifting plates of molten metal. As the sun climbs, the crimson light spills onto the sand, erasing the shadows of the night. The tide pulls back, leaving behind a glistening wet mirror of salt and stone. Every ripple in the water becomes a distinct glowing thread. The air warms instantly, carrying the sharp, clean scent of the sea. The coast wakes up. The sun hangs low, casting long, sharp lines across the sand, marking the start of a morning that feels entirely new. The stillness of the morning is broken by a soft, rhythmic scratching against the sand. Near the base of a dune, the golden light catches a sudden flurry of movement. A small, agile shape darts from behind a piece of driftwood, shaking the grains of sand from its fur. This is Bouncy. He pauses, his tail twitching in rapid, sharp arcs. He reaches up with nimble paws to adjust the fabric around his neck, pulling it tight with a quick, practiced tug. His eyes are bright, darting across the shoreline as if searching for the pulse of the day. He spots you standing at the water's edge and moves forward. His gait, a series of quick, bounding hops that leave tiny prints in the damp sand. He stops just inches away, his nose twitching as he assesses the morning air. He reaches out, tapping your hand with a soft, firm touch, his presence radiating a restless, infectious energy. He does not wait for a response, but turns his head sharply toward the meadow, his entire body leaning into the direction of the coming games. He waits for you to take the first step, his eyes fixed on your face, his tail still flickering like a flame against the morning sky. Bouncy turns away from you, his posture shifting from playful to suddenly solemn. He lifts a paw, extending it toward the vast, shimmering expanse of the sea. His gaze locks onto a specific point where the blue of the water meets the pale haze of the sky. He holds the pose, his tail stilling completely as if he is listening to a sound only he can hear. You follow his line of sight, squinting against the glare of the morning sun. Far out, where the waves crest into white foam, he indicates the invisible coordinates of a historic anchorage. He taps the air twice, a rhythmic, insistent motion that demands you look closer. The wind picks up, carrying the salt spray, and the faint, imagined echo of iron chains rattling. Bouncy does not move. He remains a statue of focus, his small frame silhouetted against the immense, bright horizon. He is pointing to a ghost in the water, a memory of ships that once defined the fate of this coast. The atmosphere around him changes, the playfulness replaced by a heavy, grounded gravity. He keeps his paw extended, tracing the path across the waves where history once anchored itself to this shore. The silence between you stretches, filled only by the rolling thunder of the surf. He looks back at you once, his eyes reflecting the deep, endless blue, before turning his attention back to the sea, ensuring you understand the weight of the ground beneath your feet. The heavy silence of the horizon breaks as Bouncy pivots on his heels. He hops closer, his movements fluid and purposeful. He reaches up, his small, nimble paw finding your hand, His fur is incredibly soft, a fine, dense texture that brushes against your palm. He curls his fingers around your thumb, his grip firm and insistent, pulling you gently away from the water. You feel the slight pressure of his palm, a steady, rhythmic pulse that seems to match the beating of your own heart. He does not let go. Instead, he tugs, a playful, insistent motion that urges you to follow. He looks up at you, his eyes wide and bright. As you take your first step away from the sand, he keeps his hold, guiding you with a confidence that makes the path ahead feel certain. The air around you begins to change, the sharp scent of salt giving way to the sweet, earthy aroma of grass and blooming wildflowers. He glances back once, his grip tightening, and leads you toward the vibrant, bustling meadow that waits just beyond the tree line. The path ahead narrows, winding between towering trees that lean inward to form a natural canopy. Bouncy stops at the edge of a small, crystal-clear stream. Spanning the water is a structure woven entirely from living, vibrant blossoms. Petals of violet, gold, and crimson interlock to form a sturdy, fragrant walkway. As you step onto the bridge, the flowers beneath your feet pulse with a soft, bioluminescent light. The bridge sways gently, responding to your weight with a rhythmic, springy resistance. Bouncy releases your hand to jump ahead, his paws barely disturbing the delicate blooms. He turns back, beckoning you to follow as the scent of nectar fills the air, thick and sweet. You walk forward, the bridge humming with a faint, melodic vibration that travels up through your soles. Each step causes a ripple of color to spread outward across the woven stems. The forest around you seems to lean in, the leaves rustling in a synchronized, welcoming cadence. You reach the center of the span, looking down to see the water reflecting the shifting colors of the petals. The transition is complete. The air here is warmer, charged with an invisible, buzzing energy. Bouncy reaches the far bank and waits, his tail twitching in anticipation of the meadow beyond. You take the final step, your feet leaving the floral path to land on the soft, mossy earth of the clearing. Beyond the mossy bank, the forest opens into a wide, circular clearing. The trees here are spaced with deliberate precision, forming a natural perimeter for the grand arena. Hundreds of animals occupy the space, their movements creating a complex, shifting pattern of fur and feathers. A group of squirrels chatter in the branches above, while badgers and hedgehogs clear the central ground with rhythmic, sweeping motions. The air is thick with anticipation, vibrating with the low, steady hum of 1,000 collective breaths. You walk toward the center, the grass beneath your feet worn smooth by countless paws. Every animal turns to look as you approach, their eyes wide and bright with shared purpose. Bouncy trots beside you, his pace quickening as he surveys the rows of spectators. To your left, a line of foxes sits in perfect stillness, their ears twitching in unison. To your right, birds of prey perch on low-hanging branches, their gaze fixed on the open space in the middle. The arena is not just a place. It is a living, breathing entity waiting for a signal. The noise of the crowd settles into a tense, expectant silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. You stand at the edge of the inner circle, feeling the weight of the moment. The space is ready. The participants are in position. Everything in the meadow seems to hold its breath. The silence in the arena stretched until it felt like a physical weight. Then A rabbit darted into the center of the clearing. It moved with a sudden snapping speed that drew every eye in the circle. The rabbit stopped, braced its hind legs, and launched a bright woven ball high into the blue expanse above. The object climbed, spinning against the sunlight, tracing a perfect arc that cut through the stillness. All heads tilted upward, tracking the trajectory as the ball reached its peak and began its descent. A massive bear stood waiting, its paws raised, muscles coiled in anticipation. The ball dropped, whistling slightly as it sliced through the air. With a sudden, controlled motion, the bear stepped forward and caught the object with a heavy, resonant thud that echoed against the surrounding trees. The sound acted like a trigger. Instantly, the tension in the arena snapped. A roar of approval rose. The bear held the ball aloft, signaling the official start of the games. The clearing transformed into a blur of activity. The energy in the clearing shifted from observation to participation. You moved toward the starting line, your pulse quickening to match the rapid thrumming of the drums. Bouncy nudged your hand, his touch firm, guiding you into the lane marked by stones and flattened grass. You stood between a deer and a fox, their muscles coiled and ready, the air between you charged with static. You dropped into a crouch, fingers digging into the cool, packed earth, eyes locked on the path ahead. The scent of crushed clover and damp soil rose up as you shifted your weight, testing the grip of your soles against the ground. Adrenaline flooded your limbs, turning the anticipation into a sharp, singular focus. The deer beside you exhaled, a short, rhythmic sound that signaled total readiness. You mirrored the motion, steadying your breath, feeling the ground beneath you vibrate with the collective energy of the animals waiting for the signal. The world narrowed down to the stretch of track ahead, the trees blurring into a wall of green. A sharp cry echoed from the edge of the arena, and the line broke. You pushed off, launching yourself forward. The initial scramble smoothed into a steady, driving gallop. Your feet struck the earth with a rhythmic thud that echoed the heartbeat of the meadow. Beside you, the fox moved with fluid, predatory grace, its paws barely skimming the surface of the trail. You adjusted your stride, lengthening your reach to match the cadence of the animal. Every inhalation pulled in the sharp, clean scent of pine needles and turned soil. You locked your gaze on the fox's shoulder, moving in perfect tandem as the landscape blurred into long streaks of green and brown. The ground felt firm, responsive, pushing back against your soles with every impact. A sense of total alignment took hold. The frantic tension of the start dissolved, replaced by the mechanical precision of muscles working in concert. You were no longer just running alongside the pack, you were part of its momentum. The fox glanced back, its eyes bright, and adjusted its pace to keep the connection unbroken. You pushed harder, your chest expanding, feeling the raw power of the sprint surge through your legs. The world narrowed to the sound of breathing and the rhythmic vibration of the earth. You reached a state of fluid motion, the distance between you and the fox vanishing until you moved as a single unified force. The fox veered toward the edge of the path, its pace dropping just enough to create a window for the exchange. You reached out, your hand steady despite the exertion of the sprint. The fox extended its front paw and the baton slid into your palm with a sudden, jarring weight. It was not cold, like wood or metal. It was warm, pulsing with a rhythmic intensity that travelled instantly up your wrist. A soft crimson glow erupted from the centre of the cylinder, casting long, flickering shadows across the grass. You gripped it tighter, feeling the vibration of the light against your skin. It felt alive, a concentrated pulse of energy that seemed to beat in time with your own racing heart. The surface of the baton hummed, a low-frequency sound that resonated through your bones. You adjusted your grip, your fingers finding the grooves worn smooth by countless hands before yours. The red light intensified, bleeding through your knuckles and illuminating the path ahead with a steady, guiding brilliance. You took a deep breath, the air tasting of ozone and ancient energy, and surged forward. The baton was no longer just an object. It was a conduit, pulling you into the flow of the race with renewed, unyielding force. The baton felt heavier now, not with physical mass, but with the density of 1,000 memories. You slowed your stride for a fraction of a second, the ground beneath your feet seeming to vibrate with the echoes of those who had carried this light before you. The red glow deepened, casting a steady, rhythmic pulse that synced with the thud of your own heart. You felt the weight of history pressing against your palm, a tangible reminder of the struggles and the triumphs that defined this day. Yet, as the warmth radiated through your arm, a strange lightness took hold in your chest. It was the buoyancy of hope, a sharp contrast to the gravity of the past. You realized that the burden was not meant to slow you down, but to anchor your purpose. The air around you seemed to thicken with the significance of the moment, the scent of crushed grass and ozone sharpening in your nostrils. You tightened your fingers around the smooth surface, the light pulsing brighter as you acknowledged the legacy you were now holding. The hesitation vanished, replaced by a clear, singular resolve. With a final, deep breath, you pushed the weight aside, letting the lightness of hope propel you forward. You pivoted, your boots digging into the soft earth as you accelerated. The transition from the open meadow to the edge of the forest happened in a heartbeat. The ancient oak trees loomed ahead, their thick trunks forming a natural corridor that seemed to shrink the world down to the path directly before you. You leaned into the turn, your muscles coiled and ready, and surged forward. The landscape began to smear into long, horizontal streaks of green and brown. The rhythmic thud of your feet against the dirt became the only sound that mattered, a steady beat that drowned out the distant cheers. You focused your gaze on the narrow gap between two massive oaks, the bark a textured blur of grey and mossy shadow. Every stride was deliberate, a calculated extension of your reach. The air whipped past your face, cool and sharp, carrying the scent of damp earth and deep roots. You did not look back. You did not look at the sky. Your entire existence narrowed to the distance between your current position and the next cluster of trees. The world outside the path ceased to exist, replaced by the singular, driving necessity of the sprint. You pushed harder, your lungs burning with the exertion, your eyes locked onto the shifting light patterns dancing across the trail ahead as you tore through the grove. The frantic pace of the sprint began to level off as the dense grove opened into a clearing. You felt the fire in your lungs, the sharp, metallic tang of exertion, but you did not let it dictate your movement. Instead, you forced your diaphragm to expand in a measured, rhythmic cadence. Inhale, exhale. The jagged gasps that had defined the last 100 yards smoothed into a steady, powerful flow of air. You paid attention to the resistance of the wind against your chest, using it to pace your recovery. Your legs continued to cycle with mechanical precision. This was the shift you had been waiting for, the moment where the body stops struggling against the task and starts to own it. Your pulse, once a frantic drum, settled into a deep, resonant thrum that matched the quiet stability of the ancient trees around you. Every breath was a testament to the strength you had cultivated, a quiet victory over the exhaustion. You were in control. The final curtain of leaves parted, revealing the sun-drenched expanse of the finish line. You stepped out of the shadows, the sudden brightness forcing you to squint against the glare. There, perched atop a weathered wooden post, sat the owl. It did not move. Its feathers were still, its gaze fixed on the horizon, embodying a stillness that contrasted sharply with the rhythm of your racing heart. You adjusted your stride, your boots finding purchase on the uneven sun-baked earth. The finish line was no longer a vague concept. It was a physical point in space, marked by the unwavering presence of the bird. You felt the weight of the journey in your calves and the heat radiating from your skin, but the fatigue vanished the moment your eyes met the owl's steady amber stare. Every step you took now felt deliberate, stripped of the frantic energy of the sprint and replaced by a singular focused intent. The silence of the final approach was shattered by a low rhythmic vibration beneath your feet. It started as a tremor, a subtle shift in the earth that traveled up through your soles. Then the sound broke. A collective roar erupted from the meadow, a wall of noise that hit you with the force of a physical gust. It was not just cheering. It was 1,000 voices rising in unison, a tide of sound that seemed to lift you off the ground. You saw the animals now, a blur of motion at the perimeter of your vision. The fox, the deer, the rabbits, they were all there, standing on their hind legs, their voices blending into a singular, thunderous wave. The sound surged forward, wrapping around you, pressing against your back like a gentle, invisible hand. It pushed you through the final stretch, turning your exhaustion into momentum. The world was no longer just the path or the owl. It was the roar itself, a living, breathing entity of support that carried you toward the finish line. You crossed the threshold, the imaginary line dissolving beneath your feet as you finally slowed your pace. The momentum that had carried you for miles did not vanish instantly. It lingered in your legs, a buzzing, electric fatigue that felt like a badge of honor. You took 3 more steps, your chest heaving, your lungs drinking in the cool meadow air. A brief stumble forced you to plant your hands on your knees, your head hanging low as the world spun in slow, gentle circles. Then you straightened up. The roar of the crowd began to settle into a steady, rhythmic hum, a backdrop to the quiet triumph blooming in your chest. You looked down at your hands, then back toward the path you had just conquered. The ground felt solid, real, and incredibly satisfying under your feet. A wide, involuntary smile broke across your face, fueled by the realization that the distance was behind you. You were no longer the person who had started the race. You were someone who had finished it. The air felt lighter, clearer, and every breath you drew was deep and steady. You stood tall, watching the sunlight dance across the grass, feeling the warmth of the day sink into your skin. A rhythmic sound cut through the settling hum of the meadow. It was sharp, deliberate, and growing closer with every beat. You turned to see Bouncy moving toward you, his paws striking together in a steady, enthusiastic cadence. He stopped just a few feet away, his expression bright and focused entirely on you. He continued to clap, the sound echoing against the quiet grass, each strike a clear signal of his pride. You watched his movements, the energy in his small frame mirroring the intensity you had felt during the race. He stepped forward, reaching out to touch your hand, his touch light and grounding. The clapping ceased, but the resonance of the gesture remained, hanging in the air between you like a shared secret. You felt the bond between you tighten, a silent acknowledgement of the effort you had poured into the day. His eyes held a steady, unwavering warmth that seemed to reflect the very victory you were still processing. It was a moment of profound clarity, leaving only the two of you in the center of the meadow. You realized then that the accomplishment was not just in the finish line, but in the person standing beside you. The energy of the race began to ebb, replaced by a new, more deliberate momentum. Bouncy gestured toward the center of the meadow, where the ancient oak stood as a silent sentinel. You began to walk, your stride lengthening as the adrenaline faded into a steady, rhythmic pulse. The other animals followed, their movements slowing to match the quiet gravity of the destination. As you neared the tree, the sunlight shifted, filtering through the dense canopy to paint the ground in dappled patterns of gold and shadow. The air grew cooler here, carrying the scent of deep earth and aged wood. You stepped over the gnarled, protruding roots, feeling the texture of the bark beneath your palms as you brushed past the trunk. The group formed a circle, the soft grass cushioning your weight as you sat. The silence was not empty. It was heavy with expectation. You looked around, seeing the fox, the deer, and the rabbit settling into their places, their faces turned toward the center. You drew a long, slow breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs. You sat upright, waiting for the next moment to unfold. The silence under the canopy deepened, turning heavy and expectant. Every creature in the circle remained motionless, eyes fixed on the owl. He shifted his weight, his talons gripping the bark of the branch he perched upon. With a slow, deliberate movement, he reached into a hollow within the trunk. He pulled out a roll of thick, yellowed parchment. The sound of the paper uncoiling was sharp, a dry, rhythmic rasp that seemed to vibrate through the quiet air. It was a sound of history itself, brittle and ancient. He spread the map across a flat, mossy root that served as a natural table. The paper resisted at first, curling at the edges, but he smoothed it down with a steady, firm pressure. As the map flattened, the light filtering through the leaves shifted, catching the intricate lines and faded ink markings on the surface. The animals leaned forward in unison, their breath held. You watched the fibers of the paper, worn thin by time, yet holding the weight of 1,000 stories. The owl did not speak yet. He let the map sit there, a silent testament to the past, while the rustle of the paper settled into the stillness of the forest. The owl extended a single sharp talon, hovering it just above the surface of the map. He began to trace a faint, winding line that cut across the faded topography. His movement was slow, deliberate, following the path of a great leader from a century past. As he moved, the ink seemed to catch the light, glowing with a soft, persistent intensity. He stopped at a specific intersection of mountains and coast, pressing his talon firmly into the parchment. The sound of his claw against the paper was a dry, rhythmic click. He looked up, his gaze sweeping across the circle of animals, then pointed toward the ground beneath your feet. The connection was immediate. You looked down at the mossy earth, realizing the very soil you occupied was the same terrain marked on the ancient document. The history was not trapped in the fibers of the paper. It was embedded in the roots and the dirt surrounding you. The owl traced the line again, this time mimicking the stride of a traveler. He moved his talon across the map, then gestured to the horizon, showing how the journey had unfolded across these very hills. The air felt charged with the weight of that legacy. You shifted your position, feeling the solid ground beneath you as if it were a map of its own, etched with the footsteps of those who had stood here long before the trees had reached this height. The forest canopy overhead shifted, caught by a sudden gentle breeze. Sunlight began to dance through the dense leaves, casting flickering golden patterns across the map and the mossy ground. You watched as the light moved, illuminating the dust motes suspended in the air like tiny, suspended stars. The warmth of the sun touched your skin, a sharp contrast to the cool, damp earth beneath your palms. You leaned in closer, your elbows resting on your knees, mirroring the posture of the animals around you. The silence in the meadow was absolute, broken only by the distant, rhythmic rustle of the wind through the high branches. Every flicker of light seemed to emphasize the stillness of the owl, who stood motionless, his eyes reflecting the dappled brightness of the forest floor. You felt the weight of the wisdom being shared, not through spoken words yet, but through the shared focus of the circle. The air grew thick with the scent of pine needles. You adjusted your position, shifting your weight to stay balanced on the uneven roots, and took a slow, steady breath. The world outside felt miles away. The owl finally broke the silence, his voice a low, resonant rasp that seemed to vibrate in the hollow of your chest. He spoke of courage not as an abstract concept, but as a physical demand placed upon the body. He stood tall, his wings tucked tight, demonstrating the posture of a sentinel. He explained that a strong body was the vessel for a kind spirit, each muscle and nerve serving as a tool to protect the peace of the meadow. You watched the way he held his head, the unwavering focus in his amber eyes, and felt his words settle into your own frame. He emphasized that the heart could only be as brave as the legs that carried it forward. He gestured to the animals around you, noting how their collective endurance had fueled the day's events. You felt a tightening in your own muscles, a lingering echo of the relay race, and suddenly understood the gravity of his message. Courage required the stamina to stand, the discipline to move, and the clarity to act when the moment demanded it. He paused, his gaze locking onto yours, and you felt the weight of his expectation. You looked down at your legs, still dusted with the fine soil of the track. The muscles felt tight, coiled like a spring, and you could still feel the phantom pulse of the baton against your palm. The owl's words hung in the air, but they were no longer just sounds. They were becoming a physical sensation. You shifted your weight, feeling the firm resistance of the ground beneath your heels, and remembered the exact moment you crossed the finish line. That drive, that singular focus that pushed you past the fox and the deer, was not yours alone. It was the same fire that had fueled the great leader who once stood on this very patch of earth. You flexed your calves, feeling the strength that had carried you through the relay, and the realization hit you with the force of a physical blow. This was not just fatigue, this was capacity. The power in your stride was a direct echo of the history the map described. You stood up slowly, testing your balance, and felt the steady, grounded energy radiating from your core to your toes. The connection was undeniable. You were not just a participant, you were a vessel for the same resilience. The owl watched you process the realization, his head tilting slightly as he waited for the next step. He hopped down from the branch, his talons clicking against the roots of the ancient oak. He did not let you linger in the pride of your own endurance. Instead, he gestured toward a small, struggling squirrel nearby, one unable to navigate the uneven terrain of the meadow. The lesson shifted instantly from the power of the body to the purpose of the spirit. He explained that strength without kindness was merely force, a hollow exertion that left no mark on the world. You looked at your legs, still humming with the energy of the race, and then at the small creature. You stood up, the fatigue in your calves forgotten, and walked over to offer a steadying hand. As the squirrel gripped your fingers, you felt the true weight of the owl's words. The physical capacity you had cultivated was a tool for protection, a way to lift those who could not stand alone. The owl folded the map, his task complete, and looked toward the horizon where the sun began its slow descent. The air grew cooler, carrying the crisp scent of the sea, and the golden light of the afternoon started to stretch the shadows across the meadow. You turned away from the ancient oak, your pulse steady, and noticed the first subtle changes in the landscape. A sudden breeze swept through the tall grass, causing it to ripple like the surface of a disturbed pond. Then, as if on cue, the meadow began to change. From the edges of the forest, animals emerged carrying lengths of fabric. They moved with purpose, staking the ground and unfurling wide banners. Within moments, the green expanse was broken by a sudden vibrant tide. Red and white colors flooded the field, catching the fading sunlight. The quiet of the forest floor was replaced by the rustle of thousands of fabric edges snapping in the wind. It was not just a change of scenery, it was a total shift in the atmosphere. The meadow had become a living, breathing canvas of national pride, and the energy of the day was rising once more, preparing for the final celebration to come. You stepped forward, moving into the heart of the meadow where the transformation was absolute. Thousands of flags now stood in rigid, orderly rows, their fabric snapping in unison against the cooling air. Each piece of red and white cloth caught the light, creating a shimmering, rhythmic motion that seemed to pulse with the life of the land. You walked between the lines, the banners brushing against your shoulders like a soft, constant touch. The sheer scale of the display was staggering. It was no longer a field of grass, but a vast, unified landscape that stretched toward the horizon. You looked up, seeing the sky framed by the endless flutter of colors. The sound was hypnotic, a low, steady roar of fabric against wind that drowned out the distant rustle of the forest. Every flag, represented a heartbeat, a singular point of energy contributing to the massive collective strength of the meadow. You realized then that the pride you felt was not yours alone. It was shared by every creature standing here, reflected in the synchronized dance of the banners. A low, resonant thrum vibrated through the soles of your feet, shaking the ground before the sound even reached your ears. It came from the forest edge, a steady, heavy pulse that commanded attention. You turned toward the source. A group of animals emerged from the tree line, led by a fox carrying a large, skin-stretched drum. He struck the surface with a rhythmic, powerful force. The sound echoed across the meadow, sharp and deliberate. It was a call to motion. Bouncy nudged your arm, his eyes bright, and pointed toward the line forming behind the drummers. You stepped into the flow, your boots finding the rhythm instantly. 1 step, 2 steps, the beat dictated the pace. You felt the shift in your own muscles as you fell into sync with the creatures around you. The flags above seemed to wave harder, their fabric snapping in time with the percussion. You were no longer just a spectator. Every stride felt lighter, fueled by the steady, driving cadence that pushed the entire procession forward. The parade moved as a single breathing entity. Your stride matched the deer to your left and the fox to your right, your feet striking the earth in a precise, synchronized cadence that resonated through the meadow. There was no hesitation in the line. Every movement was deliberate, a physical manifestation of the shared purpose. You felt the power of the group surging around you, a current of energy that made your own steps feel effortless. When the drummers increased the tempo, the entire column responded instantly, tightening the formation without breaking the rhythm. You were no longer just walking. You were part of a massive, unstoppable force of progress. The ground beneath you seemed to vibrate with the collective weight of 1,000 hearts beating in time. The line pressed on, driven by the unwavering beat, carving a path toward the horizon with absolute rhythmic certainty. The rhythmic thud of the drums dominated the air, steady and relentless, until it cut out completely. The silence that followed was heavy, sudden, and absolute. You stopped, your boots sinking into the soft earth of the meadow, and looked up as the collective movement of the crowd halted. A sharp whistle pierced the stillness, rising from the horizon like a physical projectile. Then the sky tore open. A single brilliant sphere of gold ignited directly overhead, expanding into a jagged, shimmering crown that bathed the entire field in harsh, flickering light. Before the first glow could fade, a second explosion rocked the air, followed by a third, a fourth, and a dozen more in rapid, thunderous succession. The night was no longer dark. It was a canvas of violent, beautiful color. Streaks of crimson and white fanned out across the velvet expanse, raining down sparks that seemed to hang suspended in the air. You tilted your head back, your eyes widening as the next wave of light bloomed, turning the clouds into glowing, translucent curtains. Every explosion was a physical shockwave. The chaotic blossoms of light began to organize, weaving together in the high atmosphere. You watched as the sparks drifted, not falling randomly, but pulling into precise, glowing lines. A long, luminous stroke appeared, followed by a curve, then a sharp angle. The word peace ignited in brilliant white, hanging suspended against the dark expanse like a promise written in fire. The crowd let out a collective gasp, a sound that rippled through the meadow. Before the last letter could dim, a new set of projectiles whistled upward, tracing a different path across the velvet sky. They burst in sequence, dotting the horizon with vibrant, pulsating points that connected into the letters of progress. The sky had become a living document, a canvas of collective dreams. You stood motionless, your neck craned upward, tracking the slow drift of the glowing embers as they descended toward the tree line. The air remained warm from the heat of the explosions, and the scent of ozone mixed with a damp grass. Every animal in the meadow stood transfixed, their silhouettes outlined by the shimmering script above. The message was unmistakable, a radiant declaration that turned the night into a shared vision of what could be achieved when hearts beat in unison. The glowing letters began to fray at the edges, dissolving into a rain of golden sparks that drifted slowly toward the earth. As the final remnants of the message faded, a new sequence ignited, this time a rapid-fire cascade of silver and crimson. The light was blinding, washing over the meadow in waves that turned the night into a mirror of the sky. You stood rooted to the spot, your face catching the full intensity of the shimmer, the brilliance reflected in your eyes, turning your pupils into twin points of fire. Every flicker of the display etched itself into your vision, casting long, dancing shadows against the trees behind you. You felt the warmth of the light on your skin, a tangible heat that seemed to pulse in time with the distant, dying echoes of the explosions. The awe was not just in the spectacle, but in the realization that this light was the same energy that had fueled the journey from the coast to the meadow. You breathed in the scent of ozone and cooling earth, your heart hammering against your ribs. The light had claimed you. The final echoes of the fireworks rumbled in the distance, leaving the air vibrating with a low, lingering hum. As the sky transitioned from brilliant flashes back to the deep velvet of night, the meadow remained alive with the restless energy of the crowd. You stood still, the afterimage of the light still dancing behind your eyelids. A soft pressure touched your side. Bouncy moved closer, his movements deliberate and calm. He leaned his weight against your shoulder, a steady, grounding presence. Amidst the lingering excitement of the surrounding animals, you felt the warmth of his body through your arm, a physical anchor that cut through the fading adrenaline of the race. The noise of the celebration continued, but the space between you and Bouncy felt like a quiet island. You shifted slightly to balance his weight, and he pressed back, his presence, a silent acknowledgement of the day's journey. The air cooled, the heat of the fireworks replaced by the gentle breeze. The sharp, jagged cheers of the crowd began to soften, losing their urgency as the night deepened. What was once a roar of excitement transformed into a low, rolling murmur that drifted across the meadow like a receding tide. You listened as the individual voices merged, becoming a single, rhythmic hum that vibrated in the cool air. The frantic beat of the drums slowed, matching the steady pace of your own heart. One by one, the sounds of the celebration lost their edge, smoothing out into a comforting drone that felt less like noise and more like a lullaby. The air, previously thick with the echoes of the day, now carried only the gentle rustle of grass and the distant, rhythmic sigh of the sea. You felt the tension leave your muscles as the environment shifted. The chaotic energy that had driven the relay and the parade evaporated, leaving behind a profound, expectant silence. It was as if the meadow itself were exhaling after a long, breathless exertion. You turned away from the thinning crowd and walked toward the edge of the meadow. Your feet found the transition from packed earth to tall, soft grass. Here, the scent of pine needles and sea salt rose from the ground, sharp and clean in the cooling air. You knelt, feeling the blades of grass yield under your weight, and lowered yourself until your back rested against the earth. The ground was firm, holding you steady. Bouncy followed, moving with a quiet, fluid grace. He curled his tail around your arm, a deliberate loop of warmth that anchored you to the spot. The flags in the distance slowed their frantic waving, eventually hanging limp in the still air. Above, the stars blinked into existence. You took a deep breath, the air filling your lungs with the quiet of the night. The tension that had held your muscles rigid finally drained away. The meadow was still. The sea whispered a soft, rhythmic lullaby against the coast, and the world narrowed down to the steady, proud beat of your own heart. In the quiet, you felt the weight of the day settle into a deep, resonant sense of belonging. You were part of something vast, a legacy of motion and energy that moved through the generations like a current. The strength you felt in your legs was not just the remnant of the race, but a connection to the history the owl had traced. It was a steady, pulsing reminder of the day's purpose. You lay perfectly still as the wind brushed through the grass. Every breath you took felt deliberate, grounded in the earth that had supported your stride only hours before. The world outside had quieted, yet the internal momentum remained, a warm glow of achievement that refused to dim. Tomorrow would bring new paths to run, but for now there was only the stillness. You let go of the last traces of wakefulness. The meadow rested, the stars watched, and you slipped into the dark, restorative calm of sleep. The last remnants of the day dissolved into the cooling air. You lay in the grass, the earth beneath you feeling solid and supportive. The silence was not empty. It was filled with the gentle, rhythmic rustle of wind moving through the blades of grass, a soft sound that echoed the heartbeat you felt within your own chest. You were safe. The strength you had tested on the track and the lessons you had heard under the ancient tree were now part of you, woven into your own resolve. You felt the weight of the day lift, replaced by a quiet confidence that would remain long after the sun rose again. Bouncy remained close, his breathing steady and slow, a living anchor in the dark. The scent of pine and sea salt lingered, grounding you in the reality of the coast. You closed your eyes, letting the last flickers of thought fade into the velvet black of the night. There was nothing left to do but rest. The meadow was still. The sea whispered its final lullaby against the shore, and you drifted into the deep, restorative calm of sleep, fully prepared for the dreams that waited to unfold in the quiet, peaceful hours ahead. The world has narrowed to the rhythm of your own breathing. Every muscle that worked through the race now relaxes, sinking into the soft earth. The memory of the baton, the warmth of the sun, and the sound of the cheering crowd have all settled into a quiet, internal hum. You are not just resting, you are integrating the day. The strength you discovered on the track is now a permanent part of your resolve, a steady current flowing beneath the surface of your mind. There is no longer a distinction between the meadow, the sea, and the stillness within you. The wind continues its slow passage through the grass, a soft, persistent sound that marks the passing of time without demanding anything in return. You are anchored here, safe and complete, as the last traces of the day fade into the velvet dark. Tomorrow will arrive with its own light, its own paths, and its own challenges. But you are ready. You drift into the final, dreamless layer of sleep held by the quiet earth and the promise of the morning. The journey is done. The silence is absolute. You are at peace, fully prepared for the dreams that wait in the deep, restorative calm of the night. The night holds the meadow in a gentle, unwavering grip. There is no movement now, only the vast, star-filled expanse above and the quiet, rhythmic pulse of the earth below. The lessons of the day have settled deep into the marrow, transforming the exhaustion of the race into a quiet, enduring power. You are no longer watching the history of the coast. You are part of it, a single vital thread in a tapestry that stretches across time. The air is cool, carrying the faint, clean scent of the sea, and the world has slowed to a heartbeat. Every step taken, every challenge met, and every moment of shared connection has solidified into a foundation of absolute calm. There is nothing left to achieve, nothing left to prove. The cycle of the day is complete, and the promise of tomorrow is already woven into the stillness of your rest. You exist in this moment, suspended in the perfect restorative silence of a world at peace. The journey has reached its natural end, leaving behind only the steady, proud rhythm of your own heart. You are safe. You are strong. The stars remain fixed in their silent watch, casting a silver glow over the resting meadow. This quiet is not an end, but a bridge. The energy expended during the day has not vanished. It has transformed into the quiet resolve that now anchors you to this place. You feel the weight of the earth beneath you, a solid, unmoving foundation that connects your pulse to the rhythm of the coast. The legacy of the great leader, the shared effort of the race, and the warmth of the sun are all held within this stillness. You are a vessel for the light you carry today, and that light remains even in the dark. The wind has ceased its rustle. Every breath you take is a testament to the strength found in connection and the courage found in movement. There is no fear. The horizon waits for the sun, and you wait for the morning, both in total harmony. The story of this day is etched into the soil. Sleep is the final act of this journey, a peaceful surrender to the promise of what comes next. The darkness is soft, a velvet blanket that tucks the world into its final quiet rest. All sounds have retreated, leaving only the faint, rhythmic pulse of the tide against the distant shore. You lie in the tall grass, the earth beneath you still holding the warmth of the sun that burned so bright hours ago. This is the culmination of every step, every heartbeat, and every shared look of the day. The memories of the race, the map, and the fireworks are no longer external events. They have become part of your own steady rhythm. You feel the connection to the land, a deep, silent anchor that holds you firm. There is no need to move, no need to speak. The stars blink in the vast sky, witnessing the quiet strength of a day well lived. You drift further into the stillness. Tomorrow will bring its own light, its own challenges, and its own path. But for now, there is only this profound, restorative silence. You are ready. The final echoes of the celebration have dissolved into the cool night air. You remain cradled by the earth, the grass beneath you. A soft, grounding presence that anchors your mind to the present moment. The intensity of the race and the brilliance of the fireworks are now distant, gentle flickers in the back of your consciousness, replaced by a profound sense of belonging. Every breath is slow, rhythmic, and perfectly aligned with the steady pulse of the coast. There is nothing left to achieve tonight. The legacy of the day is not a burden to carry, but a quiet strength that resides within your own heart, ready to be summoned when the sun returns. The stars above are silent witnesses to a cycle that never truly ends, only pauses to gather energy. You feel the weight of your limbs relaxing, a total surrender to the stillness that surrounds you. The path forward is clear, the strength is absolute, and the promise of tomorrow is already written in the stillness of the night. The meadow is a sea of shadows now, held in the gentle grip of the midnight breeze. The scent of pine and sea salt remains, drifting through the tall grass like a fading memory of the day. You lie perfectly still, the ground beneath you firm and cool, grounding your spirit to the earth. There is no movement in the forest, no rustle in the trees, only the vast, rhythmic breathing of the world as it rests. The lessons of the race, the map, and the shared strength of the day have settled deep within, becoming part of your own heartbeat. You are not just a witness to this legacy. You are the vessel that carries it forward into the coming dawn. The stars blink in the velvet sky, distant and steady, watching over the quiet landscape. Your eyelids grow heavy, the tension of the day melting away into the dark. Every thought slows, every muscle releases, and the boundary between yourself and the meadow dissolves completely. You drift into the deepest silence, safe and anchored in the knowledge that you are strong, you are ready, and you are home. The world sleeps, the tide whispers, and the journey finds its perfect final peace. The last traces of the day have vanished, leaving only the vast, velvet expanse of the night. You are anchored in this silence, where the only sound is the rhythmic, distant pulse of the sea against the shore. The meadow has surrendered to the dark, and the wind has slowed to a mere whisper among the blades of grass. Within this quiet, the strength you discover today remains, a steady, internal flame that does not flicker. You are no longer running, no longer searching, simply existing in the perfect harmony of the earth. The memory of the race, the map, and the shared spirit of the meadow are woven into the fabric of your rest. You feel the cool air against your skin, the solid earth beneath you, and the slow, deep rhythm of your own heart. There is no tomorrow yet, only the profound peace of this singular, unending moment. You drift further, deeper, into the stillness. The world has faded into a singular, quiet point of existence. You are no longer aware of the grass or the cooling air, only the steady, rhythmic pulse of your own heart echoing the tide. Every action taken today, every step in the race, and every word spoken under the oak tree has settled into a quiet, enduring strength. You are the bridge between the past and the future. a vessel for the light you carried across the meadow. The stars above are the only witnesses to this profound internal alignment. There is no longer a need to run, to play, or to search. For you have arrived at the center of the legacy. The silence is not empty. It is full of the potential of 1,000 tomorrows. You are anchored in the deep velvet dark, held by the earth that remembers every footfall. The sea whispers a final soft promise against the distant sand, and you let go of the last threads of wakefulness. You are home, you are whole, and you are the living memory of this day. The final echoes of the day have dissolved into the vast, dark expanse of the night. You are no longer a traveler, but a part of the landscape itself, held within the quiet rhythm of the coast. The memory of the race, the warmth of the baton, and the wisdom shared under the ancient branches have all settled into the deep, silent core of your being. You are the legacy now, a quiet flame burning in the velvet dark, connected to every heart that beat in the meadow before you. The stars blink in slow, steady intervals, mirroring the calm, measured pace of your own breathing. There is no distance left to cover, no finish line to reach, only the profound, unending peace of this moment. The sea continues its ancient rhythmic dialogue with the shore, a soft, constant lullaby that bridges the gap between the waking world and the dream. You are safe, you are anchored, and you are the living promise of the light that will return with the dawn. The world rests in perfect, absolute stillness. The journey is finished. You are home. The last remnants of the day dissolve into the cooling air. You are no longer distinct from the meadow or the shore. You are the wind moving through the grass and the tide pulling at the sand. Every memory of the race, the shared map, and the fireworks has become a part of the earth beneath you. The legacy you carry is not a burden, but a quiet, constant gravity that anchors you to this place. The stars continue their silent watch, casting a pale, steady light over the sleeping world. There is no more movement, no more sound, only the deep, resonant hum of a history that breathes with you. You have arrived at the final threshold where the dream meets the reality of the morning to come. The sea whispers once more, a soft, final acknowledgement of the journey. You are at peace, held by the memory of the light, and the world is perfectly, beautifully still. The story rests here, in the velvet dark, complete and eternal. You are safe. You are home. The silence is absolute. The final shadows stretch across the meadow, merging with the velvet dark. Every sound has retreated, leaving only the soft, rhythmic pulse of the earth. You are anchored here, cradled by the memory of the day, feeling the steady, proud beat of your own heart as it slows to match the quiet of the coast. The wind, through the grass, is a whisper of what has passed and what is yet to come. You drift, weightless, into the deep calm of the night. There is no more need for words, no more need for action. The journey has woven itself into the fabric of your spirit, a legacy of light that remains even as your eyes close. You are safe, you are strong, and you are ready for the dreams that wait in the stillness. The sea continues its eternal, gentle breath against the shore. The world is quiet. The story is complete. Sleep now in the peace of this moment, knowing the light will return with the morning. Everything is still. Everything is home.